Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast, Defending Your Cloud Environment from Increasingly Advanced Threats, sponsored by Cisco. My name is Carol Auth of SANS, and I will be moderating today's webcast. Today's featured speakers are Crystal Moody-Storr and Nirav Shah of Cisco Secure. If during the webcast you have any questions for our presenters, please enter them into the questions window located on the GoToWebinar interface at any time. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to our presenters.
Thank you, Carol. So let's go over the agenda for today. My name is Nirav Shah. First, we're gonna talk about what it was like to experience a major breach. We'll talk about some of the changing landscape. We'll talk about some of the new attacks that are happening and how to address them. And then finally, we'll end off with how Cisco can help with some of these advanced attacks and open the floor up for Q&A. So like I said, my name is Nirav Shah. I'm on the product marketing team at Cisco Secure on our network detection and response solution. We also have Crystal Storr on the call as well. She's our product management lead for our NDR solution. And we'll be talking more about kind of the threat landscape and how NDR can help with that. So first, let's talk about an attack that has been on the news for a very long time, for the last few months, which is the Sunburst attack that targeted SolarWinds. So this attack, it's something that I think a lot of us on this call are familiar with, but it was a supply chain attack that was used to target several agencies in the U.S. government, and it really kind of breached hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations around the world. And this is very unique. A lot of people, myself included, consider this to be one of the largest, one of the most sophisticated attacks ever seen, because it was something that we haven't really seen before in a threat landscape. This is something that they actually compromised a build server within a SolarWinds environment, which is fairly different from what we've seen. Usually, you kind of attack kind of the primary target directly versus kind of indirectly targeting them through one of their suppliers, right? So very unique in that sense, very sophisticated. It was on the the front page of the news and the headlines for several months, and it still comes up quite a bit, right? Because we're still months later, we're still kind of uncovering new details and new information about the attack, and we'll probably continue to do so for the next few months as well.
And Rob, you were in product marketing at SolarWinds when this happened. What was it like?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Crystal. Yeah, so I was actually at SolarWinds for about a year. I started at Cisco earlier this year, a couple months ago. And before that, I was at SolarWinds for about a year, and I was actually at SolarWinds when this attack happened, which was, from my perspective, it was surreal to see that because, I've been in the kind of the IT and IT security space for a long time. I was at, Symantec before SolarWinds for about 3 years. So, it's really surreal to see an attack unfold around you, and your organization be kind of the center of the universe, as you will, right? So I remember actually clearly when this day happened. If you look at a chart here, this is just a chart of the SolarWinds stock, which you can see clearly exactly when the breach happened and when it was made public, which was I think second week of December, and you just see like a 15%, 20% drop in the stock price in just a matter of a day or two. And I remember waking up, I think it was maybe like a Monday morning where I first heard about it, and I think it was maybe Saturday or Sunday night that it was published, and the news was made public. And the next day I wake up and I see the stock price nosediving, and I'm like, this is kind of odd. This is strange, right? What's going on? Like you don't expect to see these kind of wild swings in the stock price. And next thing you know, I'm getting messages from friends, family. Like my brother-in-law messaged me, and he's not in the tech industry, so I knew something was wrong. I got phone calls from different friends and family as well, being like, hey, I heard your company's on the news, and SolarWinds, it's well known within IT space and IT security space, but outside of that, it's definitely not like a Google or a Microsoft or even a Cisco where it's a household name. And then next, I'm opening up Google News and looking at Wall Street Journal, and all of a sudden it's all over the headlines, right? Which was pretty crazy. And then the last piece is, I of course I log on to work, and all of a sudden I'm on a huge email thread of dozens, if not hundreds, of product managers, product marketing people, all trying to figure out what's going on. And a lot of this is all happening really close to the holidays as well. So a lot of people are taking time off, and trying to starting to take off for the holidays. So just a really chaotic time because everyone is really just trying to figure out what's the extent of the breach, what's the scope of the breach, which products were breached, what do we do, how do we respond to them, what's actually going on, what actually happened, right? And a lot of that, now we know the details, but when this first happened, in kind of the chaos of it, we didn't really know what was happening, and that's really something that if you're in the security world and if you ever experience a breach, and I hope you don't ever experience it, by the way, that is something you have to deal with, right? It's like you have to figure out what's going on, who attacked me, why did they attack me, how far along did they get, what endpoints did they breach, which users did they get to, who else got breached as a result of my breach, right? Which is something you didn't really have to think about before, but now something you also have to think about now with SolarWinds if it's used as a supply chain attack. So really kind of interesting kind of experience. Great time. I had a great time at SolarWinds, but it's surreal to actually go through that.
Well, that does sound like quite the experience. Sounds like it affected everybody there and all of your customers as well, wondering what to do and how to respond.
Oh, of course, and especially with the nature of the breach, because wasn't like a traditional kind of one-off breach where it's like you hear about it and it dominates the news cycles for a few days and it kind of goes away. SolarWinds, because it was just the scale of the breach, which was something I don't think I've ever seen, and a lot of people in the security industry probably haven't seen before as well. It's still dominating the headlines, right? It's still being brought up, and you still see kind of the response to that breach investigation still ongoing, which is pretty insane. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting time.
Well, thanks for sharing that story, Nora.
Yeah, no problem. And one thing that I've kind of thought about, and I'm sure this is kind of on the mind of a lot of other people as well, is once that breach happened, and I was still at SolarWinds, I was that partially I would probably say that's probably why I also ended up back in cybersecurity as well, just because of kind of piqued my interest there. But one of the things that's I've been thinking about is this kind of the start of a new era with more sophisticated attackers, bigger impact on of the breaches. Why were SolarWinds, it really breached thousands of orgs and affected so many different companies and businesses around the world. But in the last few months, beyond SolarWinds, which happened in December, if you think about it, we've had so many other breaches that are happening that have dominated the headlines, right? So Colonial Pipeline in the U.S. It led to price hikes for gas, and shut down oil refiner, shut down the oil pipelines, and led to fuel shortages, which is pretty crazy. And Crystal, I think I remember you mentioned that you were vacationing in North Carolina when that happened, and you had some issues because of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's funny how these breaches, they really do impact the lives of so many these days. And I think that's the thing that's changing. So yeah, I was on vacation in North Carolina when the Colonial Pipeline breach happened. And we actually ended up having to stay for 3 or 4 extra days because we couldn't get gas to drive home. Not a horrible impact. I got a few extra days of vacation out of it, but still, I wasn't able to get back to work. So it does have widespread impacts beyond just an IT security team these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that, if you look at even just like, let's say 6 months to a year ago, it wasn't great to go through a breach, but, kind of the biggest impact was, you had financial losses, you might lose some customers, and you have a reputational damage, maybe some litigation. But now, if you look at the damage, you look at Colonial Pipeline, where it shut down, so many different, it shut down an entire pipeline and it affected so many people across the East Coast. And then you look at some of the other things that happened, right? Look at JBS, right, which was another food supplier and food processor. This is something that potentially could have almost impacted our food supply chain, right? So, really kind of something that touches humans, touches people across the world, and directly impacts them, right? You really directly feel the impact of something like this versus something you hear about on the news, and it's not great, but doesn't really affect you, right? So it's kind of crazy to see the kind of the escalating impact of all these different kind of security breaches. And then of course the latest one is Kaseya, which that's an interesting one too, because it from my understanding, it only disrupted maybe 40 or 50 MSPs, which doesn't sound like a lot, but then if you think about an MSP, managed service provider, services hundreds, maybe thousands of small businesses around the world, right? So you're looking at all these small mom and pop shops who don't have a lot of resources, don't have a lot of budget or knowledge or know-how in security, who have to deal with kind of the business being paralyzed and the operations being stopped because of ransomware, right? So we're seeing this kind of escalating, like I said, escalating impact and more sophisticated attackers. And I kind of feel like the SolarWinds breach kind of signaled the beginning of this new era, right? Which is that attackers are taking it to a new level. So
yeah, and I wanted to chime in on that word attackers for a second, Nirav.
Yep.
So some of these breaches aren't necessarily sophisticated, right? An attacker is going to go after the low-hanging fruit if you've got poor security controls. Some of them are very sophisticated, but I think what I'm feeling like in this new era is just the growing number of professionally trained cyber attackers, right? Cyber offense is now a skill of pretty much every government and nation state. It's something that everybody's investing in, but these skill sets are being taught and trained worldwide. And then what are those folks doing on the weekends for some extra cash, right?
Yep.
Who's monitoring that type of behavior? And so there's just this proliferation of cyber offense expertise, if you will,
Right.
that startles me a bit.
Absolutely. I mean, you're seeing the malware economy, right? With, for example, on the ransomware side, with Bitcoin prices increasing, and of course, it's making more lucrative and making it more worth your while to go out and do an attack. And then you're seeing kind of some nation states are kind of either training some of these attackers, these cyber criminals themselves, or in some cases they're just kind of turning a blind eye, right, and turning the other cheek, and kind of pretending that they don't see what they're doing, right? So you're seeing these types of kind of techniques and attackers kind of escalate in a sense. So I know a lot of things that are probably on the mind of a lot of our customers and a lot of security teams around the world is, how do I stop these attacks, right? How do I prevent or these attacks, or if something does get through, how do I stop a security incident from becoming a full-blown breach? And so there's a few questions we believe that you should be kind of asking yourself when you're thinking about these types of attacks. First of all is, how do I get visibility into these threats, right? So being able to see and collect all the security telemetry, that sounds like it's kind of table stakes, but it's not really, because if you think about it, the network today really is distributed. It's distributed not just on-prem, but it's distributed across the cloud with a lot of hybrid cloud resources and multiple public cloud environments. It's distributed across the home and the home environment as well, because a lot of people are still working from home, working remotely. And so getting visibility into these different environments is not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. And that is a really kind of the most important step. And the first important step into stopping these attacks is if you can't see something, how do you stop it, right? So you need to be able to get visibility into that. And across your full environment, both on-prem and the cloud and remote environment as well. The next step is once you have that visibility, you're probably asking yourself, how do I detect these threats? How do I, before it turns into, like I said, before it turns from an incident into a full-blown breach, how do you detect them in your environment? And this is pretty important too, because you need to be able to identify what is malicious, what's not. Obviously, if there's legitimate business kind of workflows and processes happening or business behavior, you don't want to be able to kind of block that and be kind of a blocker for the business. But at the same time, if there is something malicious happening, if you have somebody who's already breached your environment, is moving laterally or trying to exploit data, or a malicious insider, for example, you want to be able to catch that before it turns, before you basically are part of the headlines and before you're part of the news cycle. And then let's say something does get through, and this happens all the time. I know a lot of companies will claim that there's you buy their security product, that nothing is ever going to get through. If you've been in the security industry for a long time, you know that there is no foolproof solution, right? No matter how effective your solution is, there's always threats that are going to get through, and what you really need to be able to do is quickly respond to it, be able to investigate it, triage an incident, be able to contain it. If there's any kind of cleanup that's required, remediate it as well. Obviously, with a lot of the kind of low-hanging fruit, you want to be able to automate that as well, automate your response. So being able to quickly respond to that is also something that a lot of our customers are asking about as well. And when you're thinking about all these things about visibility, detection, and response, this is where we feel that a network detection and response solution, or NDR solution, really comes into play. And this is something that I've been kind of thinking about as well. Because like I mentioned, the new modern network is very distributed, highly connected as well, a lot of sensitive data traversing it. And then, like we talked about, you see this like malware economy kind of exploding with kind of ransomware going around, and even attackers kind of changing their techniques a bit with the sense that they're not just going to encrypt your data, but they're also going to tell you, hey, we've also take exfiltrated your data, and if you don't pay us the ransomware or pay us the ransom, we're going to expose it on the public internet, and we're going to, basically, it's going to be a data breach. So, we see this kind of, new environment with the threat landscape. You probably already bought a lot of kind of traditional security tools, firewalls, IDSs, IPSs, kind of the MFAs as well, and then the identity part. You're probably looking at the endpoint with EDR solutions, and these are all important security solutions. But you're missing a key piece of that, which is really NDR. NDR is it's a fairly new name. This came around in the last year or so. It was something that Gartner actually came up with just in the 2019 or 2020. But this technology has been around a long time. It's been known as different things. I know it as network traffic analysis. You may know this as something else. It's basically the ability to not necessarily sit in line, but be out of band and be able to get visibility into your entire network, know what's going on, not just north-south, but also east-west traffic as well, and have an agentless solution for all of this. So you're not a bump in the wire, and you're not, causing more kind of, you potentially causing more latency or having to have more complex deployments, but it's an agentless, so it's really easy to kind of deploy and integrate with your full platform. So let's talk a little bit more about NDR. What does that mean, right? Some of you may be familiar with this term, some of you may not. NDR really is the ability to, like I said, it's an out of band, it's a passive kind of technology. So it's not going to actively block network activity, but it can monitor and detect activity that's happening. It uses techniques such as machine learning, behavioral analysis, many other kind of multi-layer techniques to do all of this. It can also analyze not just the north-south traffic coming into your perimeter and outside your perimeter, but also east-west traffic as well. So think about ransomware that may be trying to move laterally within your network, gain privilege access. That's another important thing to also be able to identify as well. And the last piece is the response part of this, which is either an automated or manual response capability. So why is this important? Like I said, this aligns with what kind of a lot of our customers are looking for when you're looking at these different breaches, which is how do I get comprehensive visibility into threats? This is something NDR can give you. Also being able to rapidly detect these threats. Again, NDR can help with that. And then being able to enable an automated response, easy and simple remediation across these threats, and help you clean up these types of threats. So let's talk about our solution. Cisco has a solution for NDR called Secure Cloud Analytics. This is formerly known as StealthWatch or StealthWatch Cloud. So some of you might have heard about this or know about this. But basically, this is an NDR solution that is out of band. It's a cloud-based solution. It's very easy to kind of deploy because it's agentless. It's in the cloud. It's using your existing infrastructure, and it gives you visibility into everything. So it gives you visibility into your on-prem environment, gives you visibility into your cloud environments. So think of things like AWS, Azure, GCP, all your containers and your serverless environments as well. Gives you comprehensive visibility into everything that your organization is using. And then it uses different techniques, machine learning, behavioral analysis, which I'll talk about, and also in threat intelligence from our Cisco Talos threat intelligence network to go out there and detect threats before it becomes something, full-blown breach. And then finally, we can give you the ability to take threats that we find and automate the response or extend this into more of an XDR solution where you can go out and unify your response across your entire organization. So now, how do we give some of this visibility? So first of all, we have hooks into AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. We have APIs that we pull to get all the visibility into these different cloud environments. Same thing with Kubernetes and other kind of containers and serverless environments. We also have kind of a simple sensor that we put on-prem, a sensor or probe that we can get visibility into all your network devices, all your routers, your switches, your endpoints, everything in your on-prem data center and your users. And so that way you can really kind of know everything that's going on in your environment. And what we do is once we have that visibility, we'll basically begin to kind of categorize that information and classify each of these different entities and users. So kind of what that looks like is once we collect that telemetry, so we have kind of, for one example of that, we have the net flow information from the routers and switches. We have other information like IP addresses, endpoint information, logs, all kinds of security telemetry. We'll start categorizing these different devices, these different entities, using a technology called dynamic entity modeling, which is basically a fancy way of just saying, we're going to build a baseline of what is normal behavior. So we'll sit for, let's say, a couple weeks, could be up to 30, 60 days. We'll build that baseline of what does normal look like for your environment, right? So what does a normal router or switch look like? What does a normal user or endpoint look like in data center traffic? What does all that network traffic normally look like? Once we have that analysis and once we have that kind of baseline, we'll use that model to then detect anything that's outside of what is normal. So for example, if you see AWS, if you see a service making contact with AWS maybe a couple times a week, but then all of a sudden that goes from a couple times a week to continuous kind of pinging and continuous kind of traffic between AWS and your environment, we can potentially flag something like that, right? Or for example, let's say you see somebody from Russia all of a sudden accessing your AWS environment or your Azure environment, and you don't really have anybody in Asia, in Russia, you don't have any presence there, we can flag something like that. So anything that's anomalous, anything that's outside of the norm, we will flag that using our dynamic entity modeling technology, and we'll combine that with machine learning as well. And then really kind of surface that alerting, surface that that notification up to you as a user, and let you kind of decide what you want to do with that. And one of the best things about this is a lot of security tools will kind of alert on everything, and you'll get a lot of noisy alerts, which it does two things, right? Is one, it kind of exhausts you as a security team, and it's kind of mentally and physically exhausting to deal with. But it's also kind of like the boy cried wolf, right? You don't really know what is real, what is something that is and what is something that's just noise, right? With our solution, what's really unique is 95%, I think it might even be 96% now, of alerts are actually rated as helpful. Because we are a SaaS solution, each of the alerts, whenever an alert comes up to you, for example, let's say you have too many failed access attempts, or you see a DDoS attack, or any kind of data exfiltration happening, that when that alert comes up, you will actually get to say, is this useful? Yes. Is this not useful? No. And what we've seen so far is around 95% of our alerts are actually rated as helpful. So this is something that we give you the right amount of alerts, high fidelity alerts. We don't give you too much. We don't give you too little. It's just kind of the right amount where we give you just enough so you can go out there and find what is actually malicious, what's actually anomalous, and be able to quickly respond to that. And then it's not just kind of the visibility and detection, but it's also the response technology as well, and responsibility as well. We actually have a built-in integration, so it's basically included with our solution. You don't have to pay additional charge for it. Is a tool called SecureX from Cisco as well. And SecureX is basically an XDR solution, extended threat detection and response, that integrates not just with all of the other Cisco secure solutions, our EDR solutions and email solutions, a lot of other network and SASE solutions as well, but it also integrates with third parties too. So this is a place where it gives you, first of all, unified visibility. You can that's a single place where you can go to. The console is just almost basically integrated within our solution. It's just a ribbon at the bottom of your secure cloud analytics or NDR solution. And then most importantly is you have automated orchestration, automated workflows built in within SecureX. So a lot of kind of the manual work, manual response, manual investigation, you can automate a lot of that. There's pre-built playbooks that you can use. You can customize all of that as well. And a great thing is, because it's tightly integrated with Secure Cloud Analytics, anything that we see within Secure Cloud Analytics, any kind of anomalous behavior or any kind of threats, you can automate that response as well. Or you can just go into SecureX and you can manually go and respond to something that, an alert that is found within Secure Cloud Analytics shows up in SecureX as well. So a really cool kind of ability to also respond, not just with kind of the telemetry found through our NDR solution, but you can combine that with the telemetry from our endpoints, from our umbrella and duo solutions with kind of MFA and DNS traffic as well, and email traffic, and all these other kind of tools across the entire environment. So you get kind of better detections, better response, and ultimately you're reducing the amount of dwell time and containing threats faster. And I think, Crystal, I'll turn it over to you because I think you have a demo of our solution coming up. Do you want to let me hand the ball over to you.
All right. All right, back on the same slide, but I'll take over from here. Thanks, Nirav. So just to kind of recap, Secure Cloud Analytics does provide the ability for our customers to get unified visibility across their modern network, right? Whether it's your on-premise assets or the assets that you have in the public cloud, they all matter. They're all really important and running your business. So we give our customers the ability to quickly detect security incidents and really accelerate the response and investigation time. And before I go into the demo, I just wanted to kind of circle back to Sunburst and the attack on SolarWinds. Because it wasn't just you guys, Nirav, that had to respond to this. It was the entire industry. And so at Cisco Secure, running the cloud analytics team when SolarWinds when Sunburst was made public. And so we quickly spun up our research teams in collaboration with Cisco Talos to understand how our customers could leverage the product that they had to understand, were they impacted? So simple things from understanding if they had SolarWinds servers in their environment, right? Were there any abandoned ones that maybe someone in IT spun up as a proof of concept and just has been out there? So being able to identify where the SolarWinds servers are in the environment and if you even have them. And then we looked through our existing behavioral detections as well as our threat intelligence and gave customers advice as to where to go look back, right? Look for any alerts around suspicious domain lookup failures. Make sure you investigate those a little deeper, even if you closed it out before. Go back and look at anything we found around abnormal user or anomalous workstations. And we had a lot more details in this blog here as to, what to do when you're looking at these types of detections. But this is something we take very seriously because, we do have a threat response task force that partners with Talos so that anytime something major like this happens, also, if you guys recall the Hafnium situation with Microsoft Exchange servers, that again spun up the work activity with our threat response task force to make sure that we can provide guidance to our customers on how to use our product to understand if and to the extent they might be impacted by some of these more widespread cyber attacks or situations. So with that, I will go over to a demo. So I'm now in the Secure Cloud Analytics portal. This is our main dashboard. Just gives you a view of any alerts that are open, a summary of your traffic, encrypted traffic, how many devices you have on the network. Again, because we're completely agentless and we take this outside-in view, we can see everything that's happening. New device joins the network, we see it. So you get a really nice inventory and ability to assess everything that you have in the environment. So maybe I'll start here. First thing we need to do is collect data. So there's a lot of different places we can collect data from, as mentioned, public cloud providers, also Kubernetes environments, Cisco Meraki or Umbrella will provide context. Of course, we've got SecureX and Cisco Identity Services Engine. And then we also have our sensors. So a sensor is something that you would deploy in an on-premise location, very small ISO package. Its job is simply to collect the on-prem telemetry, such as NetFlow, and then consolidate that and ship it up to the cloud where all of the analytics happen. So once we start consuming the data that we need, then we start to build out almost an asset inventory. And so we're going to automatically start defining the roles of all of the assets you have in your environment. And this just happens out of the box based on the behavior of these devices and the way they're communicating, the types of traffic they're sending. So we're able to quickly say, okay, this is, for example, an Azure virtual machine. And so I can see the matching sources, what their names are here, lots of different actions I could take, like pivoting down into the device or the observations, or even seeing the session traffic associated with it. I've also got some hot links here where I can go right into my Azure subscription and get right to the device that I'm looking at very quickly. So like I said, the first thing we do is start modeling out the environment, understanding the roles of all the resources. That leads to some pretty simple detections we can do on day 0, but we'll get into that in a moment. The next thing we do is we start making observations. So an observation is just a fact that we've seen on the network. Some of them may be malicious and turn into an alert rather quickly or immediately, but really they're the foundation or the building blocks of our alerts. So we can have lots of observations, but we just consider those interesting facts. It's the correlation of multiple observations and different types of observations that lead us to create a detection where we think our customer really needs to come in, understand what's happening, that there's a situation they need to be aware of. So, lots of different types of observations, like this Azure VM is an unused location. So, that's interesting, but not in and of itself threatening. but we might see multiple access failures or a new external server. So lots of different things you can look at here. You could also go and look at our observation highlights or observation by type. So there's all kinds of different things that we will observe that can facilitate your investigation. If there's something else you're looking at, maybe you've got a detection from another security product and you want to come into Secure Cloud Analytics and see what we know about the event as well. There was one that I was going to look for. So we also integrate with Cisco's cognitive intelligence, so we can see confirmed threat watch list hits. So lots of intel coming in from there as well. But let's get into the meat of it. What are the actual detections? Because that is, look at that, somebody's been playing around with my columns. Move this somewhere that makes it easier to understand. So out of the box, we have more than 100 different detections that work for our customers. You can see here how much history we need in order for this detection to fire. So as mentioned, some of them, like an amplification attack, that's a day zero alert that's going to turn on the second you start feeding data into the system. But something like an abnormal user, we want to make sure we understand what's normal first. So that'll take 36 days before we start triggering those types. So it's a rolling 36-day baseline, and then some roll at 14 days. Our detections are mapped to the MITRE framework, and we give you full details and link over to the MITRE site. So if you're using MITRE to map your detection capabilities, this will be very helpful to you as you try to understand, the types of things that Secure Cloud Analytics can help you accomplish. You have the ability to change the priority and whether or not a detection is enabled. We also, if you configure your subnets or your entity groups, you can change the alerting behavior. But the thing that's really nice about this product is it's really minimal tuning. So really it's, your alert priority is low, or maybe it's high, and your subnet sensitivity is low or high. And you can see that we're going to use that just to determine whether or not we generate an open alert. But we are always generating an alert, so you'll always have that evidence. It's just going to generate and close itself, essentially. So that allows you to also weed out some of the noise if, it's a low priority and a low sensitivity subnet. So let's see what an actual alert looks like. So right now I've got 18 of them. You can see that I've got different statuses. I can look at the closed ones. I can look at the unpublished ones. And I can dig in here. Maybe I'll take a look at this one. All right. And so I can see that there's excessive access attempts being made. I get more description here and some recommended next steps. I get a lot of detail about the device in question here. So I can see, the host names, IPs, the roles that we've automatically associated with this device, the entity groups, which is a logical group of resources. So that can be user defined, and we're doing some automation there as well, so that you can, know the business context around this device. And then additional detail from the cloud provider itself, since this resource happens to be living in AWS. And I could click here and get right into the security group or VPC where the EC2 instance lives. I can also come down here and get all of the supporting observations. So these, again, are the building blocks to our alerts. I can also learn a little bit more about some of these connected devices. I could go and look and see if I've seen this guy on multiple days. I could add it to a watch list. I could go investigate it in other tools as well. And in addition to the alerts that work just out of the box, I also wanted to point out that we have a number of watch lists available. So for example, if you're concerned about public cloud security posture and configuration with and compliance with best practices or regulatory concerns, you can come in here and configure your watch list for your cloud compliance events simply by turning them on or off. And again, we're going to run these checks on a consistent basis. These run daily, and we're always going to store the verdicts. We're always going to have that, and I'll show you that in a few moments. But this is really, do you want it to create an alert, something that's a real-time notification, somebody needs to take action. So some of these things can wait till morning or can wait until, weekly review, whereas other things you want that notification right away if something changes. And so that's what this functionality here is for. What else can I show you guys? Another thing that's very interesting to our customers is this concept, the things that we do with encrypted traffic. So again, secure cloud analytics, because we're passive, we're not decrypting anything, but our behavioral modeling works regardless of whether the traffic is encrypted or not, because we're just trying to understand the relationships of all the entities in your environment and how they normally behave, and then identify things like things that look like lateral movement or data hoarding or exfiltration. But we don't have to decrypt any of the traffic to see that. And in fact, you can dig into the session traffic, see everything that's there. Actually, I think I wanted to go to this report on encrypted traffic. So very useful for both security and compliance use cases. So you see here, I can apply some filters, and I can, for example, go say, show me all the TLS 1.0 in my environment over the past 30 days and investigate that way, or get a report that shows that you don't have TLS 1.0 or other insecure protocols happening inside your network or in your north-south traffic. I think the final piece that I'll show you for the sake of time is our event viewer. So that's here. Actually, I have it open in this tab as well. So this is same product, but it's our adjacent application, but part of Secure Cloud Analytics. And it's essentially your general ledger for all of the different telemetry sources that we're collecting. So in this demo environment, I have session traffic, I have rejected traffic. We can get that from either firewall telemetry or from AWS. We've got our cloud posture. So these are the verdicts that I was talking about before. I'll show you that in a minute, as well as some different logs that you may be sending in from the cloud service providers themselves. But really what this gives you the ability to do is dive deep into your traffic. So whether you're threat hunting or you're working on incident response, this is your general ledger that tells you every communication that happened between two different devices or entities in your network. So you could, again, add IPs to watch lists, go search for it, or let's say you just want to see everything from 10.0.1.2 and start diving into the data and filtering it down. I'll come over here now to the Cloud Posture tab and show you a little bit more. So these are all of the low-level details, all of the pass-fail results of all your individual resources in the public cloud. And you can kind of pivot and swim through this and create reports out of this data. So for example, let's say I only care about Azure and I'm looking for, only the fails. And maybe there's a specific account ID I care about because I've got lots of different DevOps teams managing lots of different accounts and applications. But I could get real deep into this. Let's say I'm looking for any of the compliance rules that include S3. Well, I'm not going to find those in Azure. But now I can see all of the things. So if I'm, looking at S3 buckets or my compliance or exposure related to that configuration, very simple to do. The other thing that you can do is switch over to your query mode. So this gives you query syntax where you'll be able to actually dive even deeper using common operands like and, or, and full description is here, but it's the Apache. We've seen syntax query, very intuitive for anybody that knows how to write queries. But really, yeah, just giving you the ability to dive deep, understand what's happened across your environment, and respond to threats as quickly as possible. So with that, I'll move back over to our presentation, and we can wrap it up. So in summary, Secure Cloud Analytics, it's a SaaS-based security solution. Our customers have it deployed in under 30 minutes. It takes about 5 minutes or less for a public cloud account, less than 30 minutes to get the sensor package deployed on-prem and feeding the telemetry we need into it. We manage all of the detections, constantly innovating and delivering new types of detections. So we've got a robust research team, part of that threat response task force that I was talking about before. So they're working closely with Talos and with our malware labs and always looking for new ways to detect either suspicious or malicious activity in the environment. Lots of different flexible pricing options available through Cisco and our normal sales channels, as well as AWS and Azure marketplaces. We've got the logging and data retention that you may need, both for compliance purposes as well as your threat investigation and response. You may need to look back 3, 4, 6 months as you're investigating incidents. So we've got your general ledger and automatic scale. We support customers in SMB. Lots of MSPs that use Secure Cloud Analytics as part of their solution sets to protect their customers, all the way up to the largest global enterprises, including Cisco. So really the key is to use your existing network as a security sensor to find threats on-premise or in the cloud. Nirav, back to you.
All right, thanks, Crystal. Yeah, and thanks for that demo. That was really great to see all the functionality within Secure Cloud Analytics and see how kind of easy it was to kind of navigate and look at all the analytics, the dashboards, reporting, right, and understand all of that. And so, with this solution, there's a few different things that you can be able to kind of detect. Kind of touched on some of this, but kind of unknown threats or zero-day threats, any kind of communication that's happening both across your network or into your network and out of your network, and also across your network as well, east-west traffic, any kind of insider threats that may be happening, whether it's data hoarding or exfiltration, any kind of lateral movement as well. Like Crystal mentioned, we can also examine and assess encrypted malware without decrypting it. And any kind of policy violation as well, particularly in the cloud. We can look at any kind of compliance issues and ensure that all your policies are compliant with your kind of internal requirements and any kind of external regulations you may have. And so if you're interested in learning more about this solution, there's a few different things that you can do. First of all, you can there's a free 60-day trial for Secure Cloud Analytics. You can sign up for the free trial through our website. It's also available through AWS and Azure, the marketplaces for the respective cloud platforms. And if you want to learn more, you can go to cisco.com/go/secure cloud analytics, or if you just put a quick search into Google for Cisco Secure Cloud Analytics, our product page should be one of the first listings that pop up. And with that being said, we'll open up the floor for Q&A.
All right, thanks for that great presentation. We have some questions ready for the Q&A. However, if anyone has a question for our presenters, please enter it into the questions window now. Our first one asks, are you blending in red and blue exercises to evolve your NDR implementation, and how often?
Crystal,
Again, is
take that one.
red team, blue team? Carol, can you repeat that one for me?
Sure. Are you blending in red and blue exercises to evolve your NDR implementation? How often?
I mean, that's going to be up to each organization, really, but in teams that I've been in the past, it's usually at least twice a year or you're running the red team, blue team exercises. But if the question's around how often do we test the secure cloud analytics product itself using red team, blue team, I'd say that's an ongoing everyday process with our threat research team. That's their job, right? Is to make sure, and it's a broad team, but make sure that our product can detect anything. You know, a lot of our customers will use red team, blue team approach during the free trial to see if we can actually detect that activity. So I hope that answers the question.
All right, thanks. The next one asks, during dynamic entity modeling, is there an ability to overlay no threats / malicious URLs intel and preemptively intervene?
Absolutely. So Cisco Talos threat feeds automatically included, as is our confirmed threat service from our cognitive intelligence team. So we've got 2 threat feeds plus what's coming from Cisco Umbrella. All of that's feeding into the product for any sort of known threat. You can also integrate your own third-party feeds if there's others that you want. Very easy to give us the URL and we'll scrape that and start using that for our detections as well. So that's what I would call the day 0 ability to detect known threats.
All right, thanks. Does Cisco EDR provide automatic kill of processes that are known or suspected malware?
So Cisco EDR does. That's the Cisco Secure Endpoint. Cisco Secure Cloud Analytics, as mentioned, is out of band. But the great thing about the Cisco security platform, SecureX, is that it brings all these things together. So we have orchestration workflows where, for example, if Cisco Secure Cloud Analytics detects what it believes might be data hoarding or data exfiltration, for example, we can trigger an orchestration workflow that would ask either Cisco Secure Endpoint, formerly Answer Endpoint, or even Cisco Umbrella to take specific actions that would either quarantine or isolate the host until the security team has a chance to review the situation.
Thanks. The next one asks, all this is through StealthWatch or SecureX?
Yes. That was a good one, easy one.
All right, thanks. How does an NDR solution work with EDR and XDR?
I can take that one. Yeah, so it's a good question. So this is our NDR solution, like Crystal mentioned. We also work with EDR as well, or secure endpoint, and our XDR solution is SecureX. So SecureX is where, like Crystal mentioned, everything kind of comes together. That's included for free with, or kind of built in, I should say, with every Cisco secure solution. So if you buy either our NDR solution, or EDR solution, or email, any of our, really any of the Cisco security solutions, you get it. And so that's where everything comes together. So for one kind of cool use case about kind of how, kind of EDR, XDR, and NDR kind of play together is, so for example, if you have like a malicious endpoint within your network, and we detect some traffic going back and forth between that malicious endpoint and, let's say, a command and control server or some other kind of device, we'll detect that, we'll send that up to SecureX. SecureX, our XDR solution, will then work with Secure Endpoint, our EDR solution, and use that to actually isolate or quarantine that endpoint to ensure it's not sending any kind of malicious traffic, and that threat is confined within that endpoint and not spreading throughout the network. And so that's kind of one kind of cool way that EDR, NDR, and XDR kind of all work together. But to us, it's really that in order for you to really get true XDR capabilities or even SOAR capabilities, I would argue that you would need NDR and EDR, right? You need visibility into the network, you need visibility and threat detection response into the endpoint. And if you combine those together, that's when you get a true XDR solution. And that's really why we built SecureX very tightly and included that within our network, our endpoint, our all of our different technologies, because you really need that across the full spectrum of your security environment.
All Thank you. Does your NDR solution integrate with Cisco routers and switches?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we actually have a tight integration with Catalyst 9000 switches and wireless devices. And where basically it's built in within that platform. So it's built within, I think it's iOS XE is the name of the operating system used by Catalyst, where it's basically just a flip of a switch, right? So it's nothing really you really need to configure. It's very little configuration that you have to do. It's already built in within the OS. You just kind of flip it on, and then that automatically sends up all the security telemetry up from the switches, so there's different devices, up into the cloud, into our solution, Secure Cloud Analytics. And so something that makes it much easier to collect and get that security telemetry, and makes it easier to and simpler to go out and integrate a security solution with your networking devices as well.
Thank you. Do Cisco devices like the Cisco FTD also feed into NDR solutions?
Yes, it does. Yeah, so firewall logs are a key source of telemetry for Secure Cloud Analytics. We can also store and retain those for you guys so that you have them. So yeah, we will consume, to Narav's point, telemetry directly off the switches. And if it's the Catalyst switches, that'll come direct to cloud. If you've got a Cisco firewall, we can take that direct to cloud with a very easy configuration. And then that on-prem sensor that I was talking about can be used to collect anything else that you wanted to send to us. But yeah, firewall telemetry, network telemetry, ICE, Identity Services Engine, user and device details, all kinds of good stuff.
Okay, thanks. Given that the NDR solution from Cisco can detect threats in the cloud, how does it work with other cloud-native technologies?
I would say quite well. So again, we can export our findings, our detections, to a variety of different platforms. So whether you want to export to your SIM or your SOAR, or you want to, and maybe that is a cloud service provider solution. So that's the outbound integration. So sending to Microsoft Sentinel or AWS Security Hub, for example, that's fairly easily done. And then inbound, we do consume a variety of feeds. So from Azure, we'll take Security Center feeds and bring those into our engine and help prioritize the threats that matter there. Same thing with AWS Guard Duty. So if you're getting verdicts out of Guard Duty, those can be consumed by Secure Cloud Analytics to help you kind of keep everything in one place and leverage our ability to really prioritize and identify the things that need action within your environment.
All right, thanks. We'll squeeze this last one in. It says, we're not ready to move to the cloud yet. Do you have an on-premises version of this solution?
Yes, we do. We have an on-prem solution called Secure Network Analytics. Some of you may know this as StealthWatch Enterprise. So that is very closely, aligned, very similar to Secure Cloud Analytics. Basically, it's just you have all your different sensors, your probes on-prem. That's where you use to collect the security telemetry. Like Crystal mentioned, it also integrates with ICE, Identity Services Engine, which is kind of our NAT solution that is network as an enforcer. It can enforce a lot of different security policies and kind of help with security network segmentation. And it also integrates with our firewalls, so you can get all the firewall data and telemetry, and integrates with SecureX. And it can help you to kind of get more visibility and help you to do segmentation across the network as well. So it'll kind of help you to understand, who's sending traffic to what. You can divide everything up into kind of your entire organization into different user groups and entity groups, and understand, for example, are your users that are not in IT, are they sending telemetry into AWS? Why is that happening, right? Should that be happening? I don't, probably not, right? So you can be able to kind of get all that analytics, that reporting, just kind of on premises versus in the cloud.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Crystal and Nirav, for your great presentation, and to Cisco for sponsoring this webcast, which helps bring this content to the SANS community. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast.